They say the front door is just a way into the house, but in Feng Shui, that space is so much more. It's not simply a passage, it is the mouth of qi, the entry point for every form of energy that shapes your life, your fortune, and your state of mind. And while you may have walked past your front steps 1,000 times without much thought, the truth is that the objects surrounding your entrance, the flower pot you barely notice, the colors that frame the threshold, the scents that float unseen, are quietly broadcasting powerful messages to the universe on your behalf. The question is, are those messages aligned with what you truly want? Are they calling in abundance, harmony, and protection? Or are they reflecting chaos, stagnation, and unspoken resistance? In today's video, we're diving deep into the hidden language of your home's entrance and the 3 floral allies that can transform not just how your space looks, but how it feels, how it flows, and what it attracts. Geraniums, Petunias, and Lavender, 3 unassuming yet energetically potent plants, each hold specific vibrational signatures that have been used for centuries to guide qi, calm the heart, and magnetize prosperity. And before you dismiss them as mere decoration, let me tell you a story about a Hollywood actress whose creative life was completely revitalized simply by swapping 2 stiff shrubs for vibrant red blooms. What happened wasn't magic, it was alignment. I'll share that full story with you shortly, and you'll see why these plants are more than just aesthetics. They're instruments of energy design, spiritual precision, and intentional living. As someone who has devoted decades to studying the interconnection between the visible and the invisible, from Buddhist mindfulness to the structural energetics of Feng Shui, I've learned one thing to be true above all. When your environment is in harmony, your life begins to reflect it effortlessly. Whether it's a home filled with peace or a doorstep buzzing with wealth-attracting qi, these outcomes are rarely random. They are cultivated step by step, object by object, with awareness. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is more overlooked or more impactful than what you place at the gateway to your life, your front porch. So stay with me, because in the next few moments, I'll reveal how each of these 3 plants can be used to sculpt the energy at your entrance. You'll learn which one is best for attracting financial flow, which supports emotional balance and family harmony, and which is ideal if you need clarity, protection, or spiritual depth. I'll also show you where to place them, how to combine them with color and direction, and what time of year gives you the most energetic return. But before we get into all of that, I want to ask something small from you. If this content resonates with you, if you've ever felt that quiet curiosity about how energy flows through your space, or how ancient wisdom might help you live more intentionally, then please take a moment to support this channel. Just one like, one share, or one simple subscription helps New Day Mindfulness grow and reach more people who are seeking knowledge like this. We are close to reaching 2,000 subscribers, and with your help, I can continue creating more content that empowers you to shape your life, not just with effort, but with energy. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin with the first flower and why what you plant by your steps might be speaking louder than your words. The front door in Feng Shui, where all energy enters. In classical Feng Shui, there is perhaps no element more vital, more foundational than the main entrance of a home. It is not simply a structural necessity, not just the place where guests arrive or packages are getting dropped off. It is, in every meaningful sense, the mouth of qi. That phrase may sound poetic or esoteric at first glance, but in truth, it is astonishingly practical. Qi, life force, vibrational energy, the subtle yet powerful flow that determines vitality, wealth, harmony, and fortune, needs a way to enter a home. And in the same way that our body breathes through a mouth and lungs, your home breathes through its front door. If that entrance is blocked, dull, chaotic, or misaligned, the energy that flows into your space will reflect that distortion. Conversely, when it is clear, alive, and intentional, it becomes a conduit for success, peace, and well-being to naturally settle into your daily life. This is not metaphor, it is mechanics. In my years of consultation and practice, I have seen households where family members constantly fought, business deals continually fell apart, or motivation was consistently low, only to discover that the front door was obstructed by a pile of shoes, flanked by dying plants, or misaligned with the energy of the homeowner. It's not superstition, it's a conversation. Your porch, your steps, your walkway, your threshold, all of it is engaged in a nonverbal dialogue with the universe. And that conversation begins long before someone rings your bell. That's why the details outside your door matter so much more than people think. The shape and color of your welcome mat, the symmetry or imbalance of your flower pots, the scent that drifts from nearby blooms, or the presence or absence of light and vibrancy, each one is a statement, an energetic signal that communicates either invitation or resistance. A well-designed front entrance doesn't just look good, it speaks fluently in the language of qi. In many traditional Feng Shui schools, especially those rooted in classical form school or compass methods, practitioners will evaluate a home's health not by what's inside, but by what's at the entry. We ask, is the space open or it congested? Is the path to the door curved in a way that allows energy to meander gracefully? Or is it sharp, aggressive, and direct, causing beneficial qi to rush past instead of gently entering? Are there symbolic guards like paired plants, lion statues, or blooming arrangements to anchor and filter the energy? Or is the space exposed and energetically leaky? Even your door's material, color, and direction influence the flow. But today I want to focus on one often overlooked but incredibly potent aspect: flowers. The flowers you place at your entrance aren't simply decorations, they are energetic translators. They can either amplify your intentions or mute them. They can harmonize with your personal elemental energy or create friction. They can signal vitality, prosperity, and openness, or convey decay, disorder, and emotional heaviness. When chosen wisely, flowers act as energetic emissaries, bridging the space between your home and the world, between the seen and the unseen. In Feng Shui, color is not just about aesthetic preference. It is deeply tied to the five-element theory, which governs the balance of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water energies in a space. A red flower like a geranium introduces fire energy, passion, visibility, fame, action. This is ideal for someone seeking recognition or looking to boost their public profile. A purple flower like lavender brings both wood and water tones, growth, wisdom, calm, spiritual flow. Perfect for someone needing mental clarity, emotional healing, or deeper connection. A yellow petunia represents earth, stability, nourishment, peace, familial harmony. The flower's color determines the message. The scent determines the subtle vibration. Scent, while less discussed in mainstream Feng Shui, plays a crucial role in how energy settles. Strong, sharp, synthetic smells can jolt and repel qi, while soft, natural floral scents help anchor and welcome it. Lavender, for instance, doesn't just calm people, it calms spaces. Its aroma slows the pace of incoming energy, allowing your home to feel serene and emotionally safe. Petunias, though not heavily scented, provide vibrational steadiness. And geraniums, especially the citrus-scented varieties, help refresh and revitalize the immediate environment, making your front steps feel bright and activated. Placement is equally critical. A single flower pot placed randomly has less energetic effect than two balanced planters flanking the entrance, creating symmetry and signaling support. Symmetry in Feng Shui is about stability. When both sides of your entrance are balanced, your energy field feels supported. It's like walking into a conversation where both parties are equally grounded. However, if one side is crowded and the other bare, if one planter is thriving and the other neglected, the imbalance can lead to a disjointed flow of qi, causing subtle feelings of unrest, imbalance, or energetic limping as people walk into or out of your space. Light also plays a role. Are your plants well lit, inviting, radiant in the morning sun? Or are they slouched in shadow, forgotten under overhangs, or left to wilt in a corner? Energy moves toward brightness. Light-drenched entryways with blooming life invite auspicious qi naturally. In darker north-facing spaces, it becomes essential to choose plants that thrive in low light, but still carry the right elemental energy. For example, lavender can still survive with partial sun, while certain petunia varieties and geraniums require more exposure. If that's the case, consider substituting with equivalent energetic plants, like peace lilies for earth, which do well in shade, or purple heart plant for wood and fire. It's also vital to check the health of these flowers. A dying, brittle, or yellowing plant near your front door is one of the quickest ways to stagnate qi. In Buddhist thought, form is emptiness and emptiness is form. What you place outside reflects the interior state. A neglected flower outside often corresponds with neglected focus, health, or relationships inside. Energy notices. When you water a plant, trim its leaves, speak gently to it, or move it to catch more light, you are not just caring for flora, you're demonstrating intention, discipline, and presence. That presence becomes part of the energetic field surrounding your entrance. Another overlooked factor is the height and shape of the flowers. In Feng Shui, upward-growing plants lift energy, while trailing plants direct energy downward. A trailing ivy spilling downward near your main door can cause a subtle leak of qi. By contrast, a pot of upright red geraniums creates a rising, assertive energy, pushing the mind toward action and forward momentum. Similarly, large leafy plants invite yin energy, soft, internal, receptive, while narrow spiky leaves invoke yang energy, active, external, sharp. Too much of either can lead to imbalance. That's why choosing flowers that offer both lushness and upright form, like lavender or geranium, often creates the most harmonious entrance. And don't forget the seasonal cycle. In Buddhist and Taoist philosophy, time is not linear, it's cyclical. Just as nature shifts with the seasons, so too should the energy of your entrance. Summer might call for bold, fiery flowers like red geraniums or marigolds. Autumn might ask for earthier tones, mums and deep yellows or oranges. Spring prefers fresh green foliage or soft purple blossoms. Winter, depending on your climate, may require evergreens or hardy blooms supported by elemental symbols like lanterns, stones, or red ribbons to maintain vibrancy when flowers are dormant. When you align your flower choices with the season and your personal elemental balance based on your birth chart or energy needs, you ensure your entrance is not just beautiful, it's aligned. And finally, intention seals it all. You could have the perfect plants, the perfect placement, the perfect sunlight, but if the energy behind them is disconnected, the effect will be muted. Feng Shui, after all, is not about decorating. It's about deciding. When you place a geranium at your entrance and say silently or aloud, "I welcome recognition," I rise, you're informing the energy field how to shape itself. When you tend to your lavender and whisper, "Let calmness enter with every guest," you are shaping vibration. When you touch your petunias and think, "This home is safe and whole," you are writing emotional resonance into the walls of your life. The front door is not an ornament, it is a portal. And the flowers that flank it, they are not decorations, they are declarations. What they say depends entirely on what you choose to grow, and what you choose to grow is always up to you. Energy, after all, is not abstract. It's in the dirt, the roots, the petals, the pot, the placement, and most of all, in your presence. So the next time you step outside, look down, look around, and ask yourself, what kind of energy am I inviting home today? Flower 1, geraniums. Protection and confidence at the threshold. Geraniums, often seen as simple porch blooms or quaint garden fillers, carry far more weight in the energetic and symbolic language of Feng Shui than most people realize. Beyond their lush foliage and rich color palette, they are among the most grounded floral allies you can place at the entrance of your home, serving as both protectors and stabilizers in the flow of qi. In the realm of symbolism, geraniums have long been associated with repelling jealousy and emotional toxicity. Their vibration creates a kind of energetic firewall, helping to shield the home from lingering resentment, envious glances, or emotional dissonance that may be unconsciously carried by guests or even members of the household. It's not just the physical presence of the flower that repels negative energy. It's their structure, their color, their upright posture, and most importantly, the intent behind placing them. Energetically, geraniums promote steadiness. They don't sprawl or cascade like other flowers. They stand tall, firm, and centered. Their form alone evokes emotional discipline, an unshakable presence that says, this home is aware, alert, and energetically guarded. The visual message geraniums communicate to the environment is one of clarity and containment. They don't overwhelm, they anchor. In Buddhist understanding, emotional resilience is a product of right view and right effort. Geraniums embody both. Their growth pattern reflects healthy yang energy, outward without being chaotic, expressive without losing containment. When placed on either side of the front door, they act as sentinels, guardians of the emotional tone of the household. From a Feng Shui elemental perspective, the red geranium aligns with the fire element. Fire governs recognition, reputation, passion, and movement. It is the element that burns away stagnation and activates public energy. If you've been feeling invisible, creatively blocked, or stuck in a pattern of low vitality, the presence of red geraniums at your front door can help ignite movement. They encourage energy to rise, emotionally, spiritually, and even socially. They say, we are here, we are strong, we are ready. Pink geraniums, by contrast, soften the fire element slightly and bring a more compassionate frequency into the space. They still carry fire, but they temper it with emotional warmth, ideal for homes seeking to balance strength with gentleness, especially in families healing from past conflicts or emotional disconnection. White geraniums, though less common, shift energetically toward the earth element. In Feng Shui, earth governs grounding, nourishment, boundaries, and maternal support. A white geranium near the door invites clarity, stabilizes overactive thoughts, and nurtures emotional safety. It says, this is a home of peace. This is a space where the mind can rest. Because of this elemental alignment, the color you choose matters deeply. A home that feels stagnant and dull will benefit from the catalytic energy of red. A space that already feels volatile may be better served by soft pinks or whites to bring balance and containment. That's why I often recommend pairing colors thoughtfully. Red on one side, white on the other, or two matching pinks to create symmetry without intensity. The principle here is to not just balance yin and yang, but to design intention into every petal. Placement is key. Two geranium pots flanking the main entrance, one on each side, immediately establishes energetic symmetry. In Feng Shui, symmetry is more than just aesthetic balance. It signals equilibrium in all things, masculine and feminine energy, giving and receiving, effort and ease. It also directs energy to flow cleanly into the home without abruptness or erratic scatter. When these pots are placed slightly forward from the door frame, angled subtly inward, they help hug the entrance, drawing qi into the threshold with grace and intention. This placement stabilizes and harmonizes the incoming energy, signaling to the universe and visitors alike that this is a well-tended, energetically sovereign space. But we don't stop at pots and color. We enhance the vibrational strength of geraniums by anchoring their base with a black tourmaline crystal. Black tourmaline is revered in both metaphysical and classical energetic traditions for its unparalleled ability to absorb, transmute, and neutralize toxic frequencies. When buried just under the soil of your geranium pots, black tourmaline doesn't just protect, it fortifies. It works quietly, absorbing residual energies that may have clung to visitors or been stirred by difficult conversations. It ensures that the protective energy of the geranium is not just symbolic, but actively supported by the mineral kingdom. This fusion of botanical and crystal energy is especially potent when your home is located on a busy street, at a T-junction, or in an area with frequent foot traffic, as these environments naturally carry more chai turbulence and energetic noise. By combining geraniums with black tourmaline, you're essentially creating a field of subtle electromagnetic protection, a boundary that filters energy before it ever crosses the threshold. And that boundary is not aggressive, it is loving, strong, and resolute. For those attuned to subtle energy, even the sight of healthy, blooming geraniums sends a clear signal that the household is conscious, grounded, and energetically secure. There's also a deeper emotional layer to geraniums, one that's often missed in basic Feng Shui guides. Because they bloom continuously when cared for properly, geraniums represent emotional endurance. They don't need constant replanting or attention, just consistent stewardship that mirrors the energy they bring to your home. They teach. Resilience is quiet. Protection doesn't always shout. Confidence can live in simplicity. In the psychology of space, this matters deeply. Every time you walk up to your home and see a vibrant geranium, healthy, upright, full of life, you're reminded even unconsciously of stability and self-respect. For children growing up in the home, these signals are even more critical. They internalize the messages of their environment long before they understand them consciously. A doorway flanked by strong, well-tended geraniums becomes a memory anchor, a silent teacher of care, order, and emotional sovereignty. This is not aesthetics. This is energetic education. Even the act of tending to geraniums, watering them with mindfulness, pruning them with intention, repotting them when needed, becomes a moving meditation. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness of action is just as powerful as seated meditation. When you approach your flowers as living beings, as partners in the energetic life of your home, you turn simple gardening into a sacred act. That vibration is not lost on the universe. In fact, it amplifies your intention. Geraniums can also be energetically programmed. This is not superstition, but an application of focused thought. When placing or watering your plants, hold a clear intention. Speak it, whisper it, even once. May these flowers guard our peace. May they repel all harm. May they invite good fortune. Just as a Buddhist recites a mantra to align inner vibration, your words and thoughts shape the vibration of your entrance. The geranium becomes a channel for that vibration. Over time, the effect is cumulative. You're not just creating a beautiful porch, you're layering your environment with frequencies that reflect your highest values. And when those values are clarity, protection, and confidence, you begin to attract people, opportunities, and experiences that mirror them. So when we say geraniums are just flowers, we miss the point. They are tools, they are teachers, they are protectors in bloom. And their placement at your door is not an act of gardening, it is an act of spiritual and energetic design. When used with understanding, intention, and care, geraniums don't just decorate a doorway, they shape the destiny that walks through it. Flower 2, Petunias, prosperity magnets in full bloom. In the realm of Feng Shui, where form, color, and energy unite to influence the flow of life, petunias stand as one of the most underestimated yet profoundly potent prosperity attractors. Unlike the stoic presence of geraniums, which anchor and protect, petunias are dynamic, open-hearted, and expressively magnetic. They are not just ornamental, they are charismatic invitations, calling prosperity, vitality, and joy toward your home with their abundant blooms and vibrant hues. Their energetic signature is unmistakable. A petunia doesn't merely exist, it performs, and in doing so, it alters the frequency of its surroundings in subtle but undeniable ways. Symbolically, petunias have long been associated with themes of charm, social magnetism, and emotional openness. In Feng Shui, these attributes translate into an energetic function of activation, igniting areas of the home's energy field that deal with visibility, income flow, and external connection. Where geraniums guard the gates of emotional sovereignty, petunias fling them open with a smile, saying, "Come in, come closer, come share." This is especially powerful when trying to attract not just wealth, but social opportunities, client flow, romantic harmony, and professional momentum. Petunias are energetically extroverted. Their bloom pattern is generous and often continuous when properly cared for, reflecting the principle of abundance begetting abundance. In this way, they do not simply sit at the edge of a porch. They radiate from it. They amplify the outgoing chi of a home while still maintaining enough softness to avoid creating harsh energy. This makes them ideal for entrances that need more movement without aggression, and for households seeking to increase opportunities, visibility, and social luck. The Feng Shui elemental nature of petunias leans into both fire and wood. Fire, associated with passion, recognition, and outward motion, is evoked by their shape and vibrancy. Wood, symbolizing growth, expansion, and vitality, is embedded in their botanical essence. This makes petunias particularly effective for homes where either stagnation has set in, emotionally, professionally, or financially, or where new initiatives are beginning and need an energetic boost. A young couple moving into a first home, an entrepreneur launching a new venture, a family seeking renewal after a difficult year, all benefit from the joyful flow that petunias bring. The colors of petunias carry specific energetic signatures, and your selection should align not only with personal taste, but with the desired energy outcome. Yellow petunias are among the most potent in terms of wealth attraction. Yellow in Feng Shui is a symbol of earth-based abundance, harvest, nourishment, and sustained prosperity. When planted near the front steps or in hanging baskets flanking your porch, yellow petunias signal ripeness, readiness, and open financial channels. They harmonize well with southwest or northeast facing entrances, which are earth sectors, and also serve as a stabilizer for homes with wood-heavy decor or sharp cold metal tones. Violet petunias bring a very different but equally transformative energy. Violet, especially deep purples, activates spiritual expansion, intuitive clarity, and high-frequency resonance. These are ideal for homes where meditation, healing, or creative work occurs. They help bridge the inner world with the outer, inviting clarity of purpose and attracting opportunities that resonate with soul-aligned goals. Violet petunias are especially powerful in the north, career and life path, and southwest, spiritual partnership, sectors of your home's exterior. Coral petunias, those in the peach to pink spectrum, activate communication, romance, and relationship magnetism. These colors blend fire and earth frequencies in a gentle but persuasive way, making them perfect for homes where you wish to attract love, deepen existing bonds, or create a more emotionally expressive environment. The coral also stimulates the throat chakra, energetically encouraging open dialogue and emotional transparency, which are vital for healthy personal and professional relationships. Placement of petunias is as important as their color. Unlike geraniums, which are best grounded and symmetrical, petunias thrive in dynamic, elevated, and cascading forms. Hanging baskets on either side of the door, tiered containers flanking porch step, or balcony rail planters positioned just above eye level all help amplify their natural flow function. Petunias want to spill, to tumble, to move. That movement is a metaphor and a magnet. In Feng Shui, moving forms help break up stagnant qi and accelerate energetic momentum. This is why petunias do not perform well, energetically or physically, when placed in rigid square containers on the ground. They want elevation. They want space. Their energy mimics a waterfall, refreshing, renewing, and ever-flowing. Adding complementary movement activators like light wind chimes nearby can exponentially increase their effect. A soft metal chime positioned above a basket of yellow or coral petunias creates a feedback loop between auditory and visual energy. Each breeze triggers sound. Each sound triggers awareness. Each awareness reinforces the invitation for prosperity and joy to enter the space. The combination of movement and bloom synchronizes the energy field at your home's entrance, raising its frequency with every ring and every petal. Another often overlooked benefit of petunias is their ability to reflect back emotional lightness. For homes where the emotional climate has become too serious, too dense, or too burdened by obligation, petunias offer subtle permission to smile again. Their shapes are soft, their presence is playful, and their fragrance, though subtle, contributes to a sensory experience that encourages joy. This is especially important in homes where success is pursued relentlessly, but joy is postponed. Petunias say, you can have both, joy and wealth, connection and boundaries, lightness and achievement. They restore the emotional elasticity that prosperity often requires. One of the hidden powers of petunias lies in their bloom cycle. These are not one-and-done plants. When properly maintained, they bloom continuously for months. In energy terms, this is a powerful symbol of goal momentum. They teach that consistent output, when nurtured, yields consistent rewards. This is why many successful individuals, whether they realize it or not, surround themselves with blooming, performing plants. There's a subconscious connection between the external environment and the internal discipline of progress. A porch that reflects continuous blooming cues the subconscious. Growth is ongoing, expansion is supported, and our goals are ripening. Petunias also mirror the Buddhist concept of impermanence with grace. Their blooms do fade, but when you deadhead them, gently removing the old to make way for the new, they respond by flowering again, often more fully. This teaches an invaluable lesson. Prosperity is not about constant addition. It's about mindful renewal. Letting go of what no longer serves opens the space for what is ready to emerge. This process, done weekly or even daily, becomes a moving meditation, a practice of reflection. What thoughts, habits, or energies in our lives have bloomed, served their purpose, and now must be gently removed to allow new blessings to arrive? Lastly, the aesthetic of petunias matters more than many realize. In Feng Shui, beauty is not superficial. It is vibrational alignment. A home adorned with vibrant, well-cared-for petunias becomes a statement of order, care, and energetic availability. It's no coincidence that realtors often recommend planting flowers before showing a home. On a deeper level, we instinctively know that blooming life attracts more life. And in a world where energy speaks louder than words, your entrance speaks volumes. So, if you're looking to amplify charisma, accelerate your goals, invite joyful flow, or simply make your home feel like a place where good things want to happen, petunias may be the answer you've been overlooking. They don't just decorate your entrance, they declare something about your energy. They whisper to the wind, to the chi, to the eyes of those passing by. This is a space where momentum lives, where joy is welcome, where abundance is not just possible, it's already in bloom. Flower 3, lavender, peaceful protection and emotional reset. Lavender, often celebrated for its calming scent and delicate purple blossoms, holds a much deeper and more profound position in the energetic architecture of a home than most realize. In classical Feng Shui and energy medicine, lavender is not merely a flower used to soothe the nervous system. It is a botanical ally of immense spiritual refinement, a purifier of stagnant vibrations, and a subtle yet unshakable guardian of peace. Its placement near the home speaks volumes, not through showiness or flamboyance, but through its quiet resilience, its high-frequency resonance, and its capacity to transmute tension into serenity. Unlike geraniums, which stand as emotional sentinels of strength, or petunias, which flourish with extroverted abundance and charisma, lavender operates on an entirely different energetic wavelength. It detoxifies. Lavender's energetic symbolism begins with its role as an aura cleanser in space. Wherever it grows, it acts as a subtle energy vacuum, gently drawing in the emotional static and thought-based noise that tend to accumulate in our environments. In Feng Shui terms, it belongs primarily to the wood element, associated with growth, healing, and transformation. But lavender also expresses fire characteristics, especially through its scent and its ability to raise energy vibration into clarity and intuition. This dual nature, wood as its foundation, fire as its whisper, makes lavender one of the most spiritually versatile plants in energetic design. The wood aspect of lavender means it is ideal for homes that need a gentle yet persistent energetic renewal. Wood grows. It doesn't shove or erupt. It adapts, it reaches toward light, and it brings oxygen into every space it touches. In Feng Shui, wood is connected to the east and southeast sectors of a home, and its themes include personal growth, health, financial beginnings, and family healing. Lavender, placed thoughtfully in these areas, can help release old patterns and support new ones, whether in thought, behavior, or spiritual direction. Meanwhile, its fire qualities, the fragrance, the visual resonance of its violet hues, and its ability to stimulate clarity, allow lavender to touch higher chakras, the heart, the throat, and the third eye. It helps you think clearer, speak softer, and feel deeper. It's no coincidence that many cultures throughout history use lavender in purification rituals, in sacred temples, or as part of spiritual offerings. Its presence, when aligned properly, doesn't just clean the air, it recalibrates the frequency of the space. Placement of lavender is one of the most misunderstood aspects of its use in Feng Shui. People often assume that because it's a lovely and fragrant flower, it should be placed directly beside the front door or under a doorknob. But that is a mistake. In energy work, strength must not become overwhelming, and scent is energy. Too much scent in too close proximity to a threshold can overpower incoming qi, causing confusion, dizziness, or subtle energetic disorientation for both residents and guests. Instead, lavender should be placed just off-center, along walkways near the edge of the porch, or flanking the entrance at a small distance. This allows its energy to filter and soften incoming qi without hijacking it. Think of lavender as a spiritual screening curtain. It should invite awareness, not impose itself. A good rule of thumb is to keep lavender at least 2-3 feet from the door's direct line. If your door opens to the south or southeast, this placement becomes even more energetically beneficial, as those directions align with fire and wood respectively, amplifying lavender's natural resonance. In cases where your walkway meanders or turns before reaching the door, placing lavender along the outer curve of that path helps direct and purify energy before it even arrives at your threshold. This is especially powerful when you live near a road, a cluttered building, or a noisy area, environments that naturally pull in mixed or scattered qi. The number of lavender plants you use also carries energetic weight. In Feng Shui, odd numbers are favored to stimulate yang energy, forward motion, clarity, activation. 3 and 5 are particularly auspicious. 3 symbolizes birth, growth, and creative potential. 5 represents the balance of all 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, thus promoting holistic energetic harmony. By contrast, even numbers, especially 2 and 4, can stagnate flow in certain configurations, particularly when placed along a direct path. 3 lavender plants spaced evenly along a curved path toward your door signal intention, progression, and calm readiness. 5 arranged asymmetrically in a semicircle by the porch invite subtle movement and emotional resonance, but avoid rigid spacing or military-like alignment. Lavender prefers soft spacing, slightly varied height, and natural form. It thrives when allowed to stretch, lean, or brush against stone. If you're using planters, choose ceramic or stone over metal. These natural textures harmonize better with lavender's earth-wood-fire dynamic. Lavender also responds well to sacred anchoring. Placing a piece of amethyst, either buried in the soil or set beside the planter, helps reinforce lavender's intuitive properties. Amethyst is a stone of inner peace, discernment, and spiritual protection. When paired with lavender, it forms a quiet, energetic field that helps cleanse the mind, center the spirit, and promote meaningful insight. This is especially useful for homes where meditation, healing sessions, or spiritual work is practiced. But beyond placement and numbers, lavender's true power is revealed in its relationship to time. Unlike flashy, short-bloom flowers, lavender is perennial in nature. It takes root slowly, grows steadily, and returns each season with more presence. It is a plant that asks for patience and rewards devotion. In Buddhist practice, we speak of stilling the waters of the mind. Lavender is one of the few flowers whose entire essence embodies that act. Its form is vertical but soft, its color high frequency, yet not imposing. Its scent potent, yet not aggressive. It calms without numbing. It alerts without agitating. This is why lavender is ideal for homes that have recently undergone emotional upheaval, a breakup, a loss, a transition. It helps reset the emotional baseline, restoring equilibrium not by force, but by presence. I've consulted with clients, therapists, writers, grief counselors, who have used lavender strategically around their workspace or entry point and reported measurable shifts in the energy of their home. Fewer arguments, better sleep, clarity in decision-making. It's not magic, it's resonance. Lavender's blooming cycle also aligns well with rituals of seasonal purification. In early summer, when it flowers, use that moment to sweep your porch, reset your threshold, clear your mind. Trim the old stalks, burn a bit of sage or Palo Santo near its roots, always safely, and reaffirm your intentions. Lavender supports not just the detox of space, but the reintegration of purpose. Every flower, after all, is a kind of teacher. Lavender teaches you to expand quietly, to protect without rigidity, to reset without starting over. It invites you to remember that the most powerful transformation is often the one that happens gently, in silence, over time. So while others may choose louder flowers for impact or decoration, those who choose lavender signal something else entirely: a commitment to clarity, a preference for inner richness over outer noise, and a deep understanding that peace is not the absence of energy, it is its highest and most refined form. Matching flowers with door direction, a Feng Shui compass guide. In the foundational systems of classical Feng Shui, the Bagua compass isn't simply a map of space. It's a reflection of cosmic order, a directional wheel that encodes the 5 elements in their interrelationships into the very structure of our homes. Each cardinal direction holds a unique elemental vibration that, when engaged correctly, can amplify harmony, support personal growth, and activate the specific kinds of energy we most need, be it emotional stability, financial abundance, creative clarity, or spiritual alignment. Applying this compass to the selection and placement of the flowers at your entrance is one of the most elegant and potent ways to subtly but powerfully align your home with the natural rhythms of the universe. This isn't about matching for visual balance, it's about energetic resonance. When a flower's color and form reinforce the elemental identity of a door's facing direction, the result is not just aesthetic satisfaction, but qi enhancement, a kind of frequency tuning that makes the space feel effortlessly aligned and alive. Begin with the east-facing front door, which corresponds to the wood element. Wood is the force of upward growth, renewal, personal evolution, and family health. It is the green shoot rising from soil, the fresh start, the clarity of spring. For this reason, east-facing entrances respond best to green-stemmed and upward-growing plants. Lavender, with its vertical form and deep purple hues, harmonizes perfectly here. The purple reinforces spiritual growth and insight, while the green stalks feed the wood's innate desire to expand. Ferns are also ideal for this orientation, not just for their shade-loving nature, but for their frond-like structure, which introduces softness and flow without weakening the upward movement. Avoid placing fiery colors like red or coral directly at east-facing doors, as they can scorch wood's natural harmony. Instead, focus on calming greens, silvery sage, and botanical forms that mirror tree-like or herbaceous growth. Use pots made of ceramic or aged terracotta to support grounding without suppressing expansion. Ceramic nourishes wood through its earth energy, stabilizing it while allowing it to grow upright and with purpose. Next is the south-facing door, which embodies the fire element. Fire is visibility, recognition, passion, leadership, and fame. It is the flame that transforms, illuminates, and draws attention. This direction benefits most from bold, warm-toned flowers that mirror the sun's intensity and brightness. Geraniums in red or coral, petunias in warm magentas or bright pinks, and marigolds in deep orange or yellow are exceptional choices for south-facing entrances. These flowers do more than dazzle. They invite attention and activate your presence in the outer world. They say this is a space of celebration, of power, of energy that burns clean and bright. Placement in symmetrical pairs flanking the door will double the directional force, while slight angular arrangements can direct qi inward. Pot selection here is crucial. While ceramic is acceptable, terracotta or glazed clay in warm tones adds more fire resonance. However, avoid overusing metal or white in this sector, as metal controls fire in the destructive cycle of the 5 elements and can stifle the very energy you're trying to raise. Use light sculpting textures like patterned ceramics or mosaic tiles to reflect the brilliance of fire without overwhelming it. For west-facing doors, the ruling element is metal: clarity, refinement, communication, precision, and often connected to creative children, intellectual pursuits, and helpful people. Metal thrives on simplicity, structure, and elegance. Flowers that express these qualities include white petunias, pale pink geraniums, and silver-leafed companion plants like Dusty Miller. In this orientation, you're not looking for loudness, you're seeking purity. These entrances benefit from softer, cooler energy. Think of a dawn mist or a finely tuned instrument. Avoid plants with overly aggressive forms or hot colors in this area, as they can overexcite or dull metal's refined edge. Instead, choose flowers that look serene, open, and composed. Pots made of actual metal, brushed aluminum, copper, or galvanized iron, can work beautifully here, but make sure they are balanced with natural textures like river stones or soft mulch to avoid a sterile or overly rigid vibration. Even something as simple as a circular stone base or a polished pebble layer can restore softness while honoring metal's essential character. The north-facing door is governed by the water element. Depth, wisdom, intuition, emotional flow, and life path. Water is introspective, philosophical, and strong in a quiet way. To support a north-facing entrance, choose flowers and plants in deep blues, rich purples, and cool indigos. Blue petunias, if available in your region, or a combination of lavender with darker violets, can harmonize beautifully here. Water needs movement but not chaos, calm but not inertia. Hanging baskets that sway slightly in the breeze, or plants with rounded, wave-like leaves can help evoke a sense of gentle flow. Avoid too much red or orange here, as fire evaporates water in the elemental cycle. Also be cautious with excessive wood textures or sprawling green plants, which can absorb water's potency. Pot materials for water sectors should lean into reflective surfaces, black ceramic, dark stone, or even lacquered containers with a water gloss finish. For added resonance, consider embedding a small polished obsidian or lapis lazuli at the base of your plant to subtly amplify the water signature. The secondary layers of Feng Shui flower design come not just from direction, but from the synergy between color, container, and spatial rhythm. For example, even if your door faces north and you use a water-aligned flower like indigo petunia, placing it in a red pot would weaken the flow. That's why the material of your flower container must correspond with the energy you intend to amplify. Ceramic pots are versatile and grounding. Ideal for earth and wood sectors, particularly east and southeast. They provide a solid, stable base and add nourishing support to upward or expansive floral growth. Metal containers, by contrast, are exacting and reflective, suitable only in metal or water directions, west and north. They enhance focus, logic, and sharpness of intention, but should be used sparingly to avoid sterility. Stone, whether natural granite, river-washed basalt, or carved marble, serves as a harmonizer. It neutralizes overactivity, anchors scattered qi, and supports the absorption of elemental excess. Stone is excellent in fire-heavy sectors to temper intensity, or in wood-dominant gardens to prevent emotional overgrowth. When used in moderation, stone pots offer a timeless, weighted energy that grounds even the most delicate bloom. Additionally, you must consider the form and silhouette of the flower. Petunias, with their generous trailing blooms, work best in suspended or high containers where their downward expansion balances upward energy. Lavender prefers open soil or low troughs, aligning with its natural windswept, slightly wild disposition. Geraniums like containment. They do best in symmetrical pots close to the ground, where their upright form mirrors their energetic message. Be firm, be seen, be steady. The shape and size of the container also carry weight. Round or oval pots soften angular environments, promote inclusiveness, and evoke earth energy. Square or rectangular pots, often associated with metal or wood, enforce structure and growth, which may or may not suit your intention. Avoid pointed or overly ornate pots in high-traffic entry zones, as these can create energetic disturbance or lead to overstimulation. Think in terms of functional elegance, beauty with a purpose. In all directions, symmetry remains a reliable principle. Two matching flower arrangements at either side of a door offer balance, control, and clarity. But in more dynamic spaces, such as curved walkways or staggered steps, intentional asymmetry can be used to guide energy. For example, one lavender pot followed by two petunias arranged in a triangular sequence can draw qi gently toward the center line of the home. This becomes especially effective when paired with elemental correspondence. Fire toward the door, water further out, wood acting as bridge. To those unfamiliar with Feng Shui, flowers might appear to be just decor, but to the trained eye, they are energetic instruments. And when placed with compass awareness, color precision, and container harmony, they become something much more. A living vibration, a portal through which life force moves with grace, precision, and purpose. Your front door is your home's breath, and the flowers around it are its fragrance, its frequency, and its invitation. In honoring direction, you are not following superstition. You are partnering with ancient wisdom, stepping into dialogue with the rhythms of the earth and sky, and reminding yourself that prosperity, peace, clarity, and connection are not random. They are cultivated, shaped, and invited home. Story: Julia Roberts in the porch shift that recentered her home. Among all the case studies that demonstrate the subtle power of entrance energy and flower symbolism in Feng Shui, few are as illustrative or as quietly compelling as the story of Julia Roberts in the porch transformation at her New Mexico ranch. Known globally for her radiant screen presence, Julia is also deeply rooted in nature, simplicity, and spiritual balance. She's spoken in interviews about her love for wide-open land, natural textures, clean spaces, and emotional authenticity. But even for someone as grounded as her, the home's energetic balance can sometimes be disrupted by something as seemingly minor as what sits on either side of the front door. When she first acquired her ranch in Taos, the landscape design at the entrance was visually impressive. Two enormous potted ferns, lush and overflowing, stood guard beside the heavy wooden doors. The symmetry was textbook. The greenery was alive. To the untrained eye, it looked perfect, but energetically there was a problem. Ferns, while symbolically soft and ancient, hold deep yin energy. They are cooling, secretive, and tend to hold moisture and shadow. In humid regions, they complement qi beautifully, offering relief from excessive fire. But New Mexico is not humid. Its land is dry, its skies open, and its elemental field is dominated by fire and earth, sun and stone. In such climates, overly yin plants can stagnate energy at the entry, absorbing too much light, holding too much stillness, creating a subtle emotional heaviness that is neither visible nor obvious, but deeply felt. And Julia felt it. She later described how, despite the aesthetic appeal, something about the entrance didn't sit right. She would return from long film shoots or global appearances, step onto the porch, and feel as if her energy didn't fully land. The house was beautiful, the setting was perfect, but something was misaligned. That's when she consulted a Feng Shui practitioner, not someone trendy or commercial, but an older woman from the desert region who had studied under both Chinese masters and local native healers. The consultation was simple, direct, and focused entirely on the threshold. The practitioner stood on the porch, closed her eyes, and said, "These ferns are whispering too quietly. You need something that greets you back." What followed was not a massive overhaul, but a highly targeted shift rooted in energetic intelligence. The ferns were moved to a shaded inner courtyard where their yin quality could provide calming benefits without muting the home's fire-based threshold. In their place, two unglazed clay pots were introduced, warm, textured, grounding. Into these went coral petunias and lavender. This was not a random choice. The coral petunias brought in color vibrations that matched Julia's emotional palette: passion, communication, and openness. Coral is known in Feng Shui as a social fire, a color that burns gently, encouraging warmth, creativity, and connection. It is not as aggressive as red, nor as watery as pink. It holds the heart of expression. The lavender introduced contrast, both visually and energetically. Its soft purple hue and clean vertical lines provided a necessary coolness, but not stagnation. Lavender, as discussed earlier, carries wood with fire properties. It detoxifies without dampening. It lifts the mind while calming the heart. It anchors the energetic perimeter while maintaining spiritual movement. When the two flowers were combined, petunias spilling slightly outward and downward in invitation, lavender rising upward with discipline and grace, the porch shifted entirely. Julia described the first few weeks after the change as unexpectedly emotional. She said walking up the stone steps felt different, like the house was breathing differently. She felt lighter, more settled, more met by her space. She even mentioned that the drive up her long desert road began to feel like a homecoming again, rather than just a return. Her children played more around the porch. Her writing space in city began to flow again. She was inspired to paint, not as a career move, but as a private outlet. She began spending more time on that porch, reading, dreaming, sitting still. The house was the same, the land was the same, but what greeted her at the door had changed. That subtle alteration sent ripples through her daily life. What had once been a passive threshold became an active reconnection point, a space that said, "I see you, I hold you, welcome back." In private conversation, she reportedly told a friend, "It's the first time I felt my house really received me." That is the heart of Feng Shui. When we shift what welcomes us home, we shift how our home receives us. The entrance is not just for others, it's for you. It's the first energy field you step into at the end of a long day, the place where your energy begins to decompress and reform. If that space is heavy, overly yin, or misaligned with the elemental reality of your surroundings, your system will subtly brace against it. Over time, that bracing becomes tension. That tension becomes fatigue. That fatigue becomes disconnection. But when the entrance reflects who you are and who you want to be, something remarkable happens. You align before you even step inside. Your shoulders drop, your breath deepens, your presence returns. Julia Roberts' porch shift is a living example of that principle. It was not about celebrity, cost, or trends. It was about feeling into what was energetically lacking, trusting the wisdom of symbols, and daring to let flowers speak. In this case, the combination of coral and lavender wasn't just beautiful, it was biographical. It captured the core of her energy, vibrant but sensitive, expressive but introverted, powerful but gentle. The fire in the wood, the artist in the mother, the icon in the seeker. That is why in Feng Shui, we don't just assign flowers based on color charts. We assign them based on stories. Energetic signatures, emotional needs, elemental context. Your home is not a backdrop. It is a participant in your life, and what you place at its door is not mere decoration. It is the invitation. If that invitation is correct, your home responds like a loyal friend saying, "I've been waiting. Let's begin again." Final of all the spaces in your home, none speaks more clearly to the world and to the unseen currents of energy than your front entrance. It is not simply where the mail is dropped or where guests pass through. It is the mouth of Qi. It is the point of first impression, first contact, first invitation. And whether we know it or not, every leaf, every pine, every bloom we place near that door is carrying a message. Your front porch is not just decoration, it's declaration. It quietly says, "This is who I am. This is what I welcome. This is the energy I'm willing to receive, and the frequency I intend to live by." So let it say peace. Let it say power. Let it say abundance in bloom. Whether you choose the firm steadiness of geraniums, the joyful charisma of petunias, or the whispering calm of lavender, let it be chosen with presence. Let it be placed with purpose. Let it be tended with the same care you offer to the parts of your life you most want to grow. These flowers are not only beautiful, they are energetic signatures, living prayers, and daily affirmations rooted in soil. And remember, Feng Shui is not about superstition. It is about intention. When your threshold becomes intentional, your life becomes more aligned. You feel it in the way your mornings begin, in the way people speak when they step into your home, in the way fortune doesn't just visit, but stays. Over time, what begins as a small shift in what you plant becomes a greater shift in what you attract. So before we part ways today, I'd like to invite you gently to consider your own entrance, not as a space to fix or impress, but as a place to express, to declare something sacred, something true. If this video has helped you see your flowers in a new light, I would be honored if you'd let me know. Share this with someone who may need to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me, what flower will your front door bloom with next, and why? I would truly love to hear your story. And if you'd like more wisdom like this, more guidance on how to align your home, your mind, and your energy, then please take a moment to subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. With your support, I am so close to reaching 2,000 followers. And every like, share, and thoughtful comment brings this channel closer to being a place where thousands can gather for clarity, calm, and conscious design. So thank you for being here, for being curious, for walking this path of mindful living, not just within your heart, but through your home. And may your entrance always whisper, blessings are welcome here.